You are Locked On Falcons Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Falcons Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight. You can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Aaron Freeman. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Locked On Falcons Postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So granted, guys, the Saints offense, they scored 3 touchdowns. The Falcons offense only scored 4 field goals, but with 1 minute, no timeouts, and down by 1, the Falcons did it again. And hey, it's a familiar refrain, right? When we talk about the offensive side of the ball, giving somebody the damn ball, and whether that's Tyler Algier or Younghoe Koo, you got to give somebody that ball. But listen, I want to talk first of all, we're going to get into the offense miscues, the ups and downs that we saw in this game. But first, you got to give a lot of shout out to the defense. And Free, I'm going to go back to a familiar refrain of ours as well, just in terms of bend, don't break. Now, I know you don't want them to bend it all, just break the damn Saints and keep it pushing. But today was one of those kinds of days where you allow the Saints to score 14 points in the first half, but then you keep them to 10. And let's just be honest, until that last drive, the Falcons defense really had that Saints offense contained. So let's start right there. What for you was the most impressive thing about this defensive performance by the Atlanta Falcons today in this 26-24 win over the New Orleans Saints?
I think you nailed it there, T. The last 3 games has been the Falcons defense playing suspect for like 3 quarters, and then they make the plays in the fourth quarter to get this team back in the game. And in this game, they played suspect in the first quarter and then made all the plays in the last 3 quarters to get this team back in the game. And we'll talk later about the offense doing their best to not get back into the game. But, you get the plays from Troy Anderson. Yes, Jarvis, I have to say something about 44.
That's why I started with his
opportunities I'm going to get to have to dunk on Jarvis Davis about Troy Anderson going out there and making plays this season. So Troy Anderson making that play, Matthew Judon getting the deflection, the pick 6. You got the special teams touchdown for Kadero Hodge. Younghoe Koo did his thing. So it really, to me, this game was really defense and special teams forward for this team. And like, you just kind of got a reverse of what we've been seeing, a lot of bending early in the game, and then they make the plays late. And it was like this week it was bending very early in the game. And then after that point, they kind of made the plays late. And like, I'm mad at the defense for giving up that last touchdown, because to me, the offense put them in a bad spot
to do that.
So to me, like, I got nothing but love for the defense. You started seeing guys up front making plays. The Saints had some success running the football, but there was a large chunk of the game where this defensive line stepped up after several weeks of calling them out and saying, where's the pressure? Where's the run defense? And they were able to get after Derek Carr a number of times in this game. They were able to shut down the run for a good portion of this game. So overall, to me, an outstanding defensive performance for the Falcons today.
Yeah. And also, Aaron, calling out the linebacker core time and time again for the past couple of weeks. But hey, let's give Troy Anderson his credit. And that was even going down in the game due to injury. And of course, J.D. Bertrand had to come in. But ultimately, Troy Anderson finishes this game with 17 tackles, 10 of which were solo, a tackle for loss, a pass defense, and of course, the ultimate with the touchdown. So you got to give so many flowers to him, because I do think that a part of his play, whether he listened to the show or not, ultimately speaking, Jarvis, you've got to give 44 his flowers for being such a pivotal part of this win for the Falcons. Go on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
absolutely.
I have some flowers for him.
Absolutely what?
Right here in my back pocket as I'm sitting down in this chair.
I
give him some smush flowers.
Who's him? I'm sorry, him? What's his name?
Troy.
Troy who? Troy what?
Troy Anderson with an E.
Yeah, okay. All right. There we go, Free. As you were, Jarvis.
Appreciate it.
So, here's the thing. Like, I said this even during the game. I don't want to be right about this game. This is what I want to see from him. I want to see Troy Anderson make plays, and make tackles for loss. 17 tackles, that's great. Straight. Oh my God. What stood out to me? TFL. Because we knew the Saints were going to come in after seeing what the Falcons put on tape against the Kansas City Chiefs. How they just turned around and ran the ball down their throats. The Falcons defense had to come up. Somebody had to make a play. Somebody had to say, hey, we're going to no longer let these running backs, tackle those guys and they fall forward for extra 2 or 3 yards. And I think that we saw that from time to time throughout this game. And kudos to this defense because they're doing it without getting consistent pressure. Just think. Like, at some point, they're going to have to figure it out from being able to work their moves up front and when they're tired. Because a lot of times you see these guys bull rushing a lot late in games, but they would just make play after play, like what DeAlford did in the end zone right there. That was an excellent play for them to turn over on downs on fourth down. And you just see from time to time guys like James Smith-Williams, Zach Harrison in the run game, getting off blocks, making tackles. It's a 1-yard gain. I'll take that all day for my defensive lineman making those plays. So I think that, the Falcons, this special teams and defense, and you talk about Younghoe Koo doing what he do with a 57-yard field goal, to doggone win the game. That's just huge. And when you talk about the offense struggling, I know we're going to get into that a little bit later on, it just speaks to how this team is constructed when you have two elements, be able to pick that one element that's up and it's not normal for you get a special team touchdown. That was so big. Carter Hart to jump on that football in the end zone because Rashid Shaheed, I say his name right now. when you have a guy like that is, makes that mistake and you're able to take advantage of it, the ball bounces in your favor, that's always a good sign to start the game.
Yeah, and I think another good sign is the fact that we are mentioning so many names that we kind of said, hey, we need to see you kind of step up. We need to see a little bit more productivity from you. Or we started seeing kind of an uptick even last week. And my thought there went to like a Zach Harrison. I even saw a Lorenzo Carter sighting. So it was one of those games where it was an all-around effort for this Falcons defense. But again, Free, if you're going to talk about the defensive effort for this team, you have to talk about special teams as well. And you obviously, Younghoe Koo doing his absolute thing, this particular game. And it's funny because Jarvis and I were going back and forth, but pregame, I was like, the Falcons are going to win this game, right? And I said, it's going to come down to the final possession, right? And so I'm like hitting him at the end of the game going, see, I
said it with so much confidence. I was like, where do you get all this confidence from, man?
Because I think that speaks to the fact that this team understands that any one of the phases at any given time can win a game. They're confident enough in all three of the phases, even when the offense is looking like they were looking. And you saw that not just obviously in Younghoe Koo, but also in the way that the special teams Free played overall today.
Yeah. Special teams, that muff punt at the beginning of the game, because I was talking to the Locked On Falcons insiders during the game as I do, and I'm thinking like, oh, Matthew Bergeron's penalty kind of screwed over the offense, and then as I'm typing this, the punt gets muffed and Kadero Hodge falls out. I'm like, oh, delete that. Like, hey, special teams matters, guys. Forget all that nonsense about the offense not doing their thing. The special teams came through and made a play and just made it all work. And I think that's really the story of this game. Like every time the offense seemed to be getting in their way, and we'll get more into that later. But like it was just like the special teams. All right, Koo, Kadero, Bradley Pinion, all you guys come in and save the day for them because you're making their bad mistakes look better because you're out there making the plays with the field goals, with the muff punts, all that stuff, and winning the field position battle.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was going to say as well, JD. When you have 3 punts for 122 yards, being able to average 44, almost 45 yards a punt and really darn near flip the field from that perspective, I mean, that's huge. That's critical as well because you're making the Saints work for every single point.
Yeah, you're talking about weapon, and when having a weapon, from a punting and kicking standpoint, and when you be able to deploy those guys in games like these, when your offense is to move the ball around, that's Marquise Williams. I know he's smiling right now. I wouldn't be surprised he got a bag handed to him after the game from somebody. I know pro teams don't have boosters, but I know somebody is very happy up in the top of this organization, namely Arthur Blank. So I'm really sure that Marquise Williams is smiling from ear to ear in that locker room right now because this is you're talking about a complete team. It was a team win. I mean, as much as we talk about the offense, there is something to say, hey, when you need a field goal, they'll go ahead and get you a field goal. And we've gotten used to that. So and then seeing 6 line up and kick that bad boy through the uprights and know that it was going in, those are the type of things that you look for as a team and say, man, hey, it wasn't that pretty, but when you think about it, hey, those guys can be counted on in those moments when you need it.
Well, yeah, it wasn't pretty, and we've already talked to you about the good. So we're going to talk to you about the unpretty in a second because, yeah, the offense definitely had moments where it was time to shine, where they shined when it was time to shine. But ultimately, you got to ask yourself the question whether or not what we saw today is going to get you through the remainder of the season and into the postseason. We'll talk about that on the other side in the deep dive. This episode of the Locked On Falcons postcast is brought to you by Gametime. So Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And also, what we love about Gametime is the fact that you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That's their lowest price guarantee. Also, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today because what time is it? It's game time. All right, gentlemen. Now it's time to really dig down into what had happened was. And so again, we love what we saw on the defensive side of the ball. We love what we saw from special teams. And yes, there were absolutely moments for this team. Obviously, Kirk Cousins had a decent day, 21-35 for 238 yards. Obviously, he only got sacked once. So you got to give a little credit to this offensive line for essentially helping to keep the pocket clean, right? And we saw fantastic running. I think we can't speak enough about how much this show has talked about, and even on our Atlanta Falcons football party, Locked on Falcons, give Tyler Algier, give 25 the damn ball. So there were definitely some things that we saw that we liked. And even from a receiving standpoint, Drake London had some big catches and some critical moments. And we could go on and on, but it wouldn't be fair and we'd be remiss, Jarvis, if we didn't talk about the fact that you just can't keep winning games or expect to keep winning games, especially against quality teams, no offense, Saints, but especially against quality teams when you come up against high-powered offenses and you walk away and that other team scored 3 touchdowns and you scored 4 field goals. And that's kind of meaning from an offensive side of the ball. And that's kind of the way that you won the game. I don't know that that's sustainable for success long-term. So I think that's what concerned me. But what concerned you in terms of what you saw on the offensive side of the ball today?
For me, after that first half, and when you think about what I saw, there was 7 carries for 33 yards in the first half. That is alarming. You want to run the ball 7 times when the head coach, came out, during OTAs and even into training camp and saying, hey, we want to be able to run the damn ball. You draft a running back in the top 10, and Bijan Robinson, like give him the ball, and these past couple of games, Kansas City and now the Saints, they've been keying in on him a lot, and he hasn't had any success when you turn around and handed the ball off to him. So I think that the answer to that, I feel like they get to it a little bit too late for my liking. So if you feel like they're keying in on him a lot, and you feel like you can have a more balanced offense, or you can keep the defense on their toes a little bit when you have Tyler Algier in the game, and then you start to mix it up some. Go to that a little bit earlier on in the game so you can have them thinking about that and making adjustments to that coming out of the half so you can get 7 involved. Because in order for this offense to have any success, you got to give them the rock, whether it be passing it to him or giving it to him out in the flat, get him in a one-on-one situation, man, and let him make a play. That's where I'm at with it. So I feel like, as long as Bijan get his touches, I'm cool. But when you turn around and hand it off to him, you're not having success. It just seems like, hey, we're just going to drop back and throw football. I know the Saints pass rush wasn't there. kudos to the offensive line. You got to get those credit for that. But I feel like that answer comes a little bit too slow for my liking when they're not having success running football with 7.
Yeah. And what about you, Free? Just in terms of what you saw in this game, especially in that first half, what did you think about how the offense was or maybe wasn't able to move the ball? And especially to Jarvis's point, maybe certain ways that in that first half, the calls were made as far as the run game and trying to play complementary football a little bit more than what we saw.
Yeah. I think we went into this game wondering if they could run the ball against the Saints defense, who's been very good stopping the run this year, down the injuries. But that really wasn't an issue for the Falcons early in the game. Like, it wasn't like they were struggling to run the football. They just chose not to run the football. And it's fine if you're going to replace that with like a lot of quick passes and screens, and that's going to be an effective way. We saw the Chiefs do that a lot last week with Rashee Rice and whatnot. And that's the way that you're going to sort of still add that element into your offense, even if it's not directly handing the ball off. But the Falcons weren't really doing that. They were trying to push the ball down the field, and it was leading to some ups and downs in their offense. So I think the balance was a little bit off. It did seem like once they started to run the football with Algier later in the game and even Bijan, they were able to find success, but they just kind of immediately abandoned it anytime they had some sort of setback and whatnot. And so that to me was a question mark for this team. And then just a lot of it, like late in the game, just some of the situational football that they played when they got the ball back with 4 minutes left inside their own 10-yard line and only bleed like 20 seconds off the clock in that situation was really bad. And that's why, like, going back earlier to what I said, like, I don't blame the defense for giving up a touchdown there, because like the offense, you got to do something a little bit more. Then you get late in the game, you move the ball, you get that DPI late in the game, and then it's like, hey, you just need to get like 5 yards to give Younghoe Koo a makeable field goal, and like Kirk's like pushing the ball down the field, and it's like, we don't need 30 yards, Kirk. We just need 10. Just get us 10, spike the ball, and go kick the field goal to win the game. And it was just like, it just felt like the offense was doing everything in their power to try to lose this game in so many ways, whether we're talking about the balance, where we're talking about some of the situational football and whatnot. And so that's my main concern, going back to what you're talking about, T, where it's like, that's not sustainable, where you're playing basically bad football and trying to give the game away, so that, you know, unfortunately for the Falcons, the defense and special teams were able to save them. But it just felt like this offense was just kind of out of sorts. Like we talked about Kyle Pitts having a big game. He had a very rough game in this one. You know, no blame to Zach Robinson. Pitts, you just got to make the catches when they're there for you. So overall, it was just like a couple of moments. You know, Algier had a great game. Mooney had a couple of plays and whatnot. But just overall, an offensive performance that is just like, I hope we don't see anything like this moving forward.
Yeah, because you're right. When you look at the first couple of possessions, you know, you had some of those short passes and it actually led to moving the chains, but then unfortunately it ended in a punt. And then the next possession, a couple of short passes and you're moving the chains, but then you get picked off. And then all of a sudden that very next possession is where you start seeing them chucking it down the field. And it's like, well, you were kind of getting a rhythm there with those short passes. Why don't you throw in some run plays and maybe see if you can get something going? Now, we saw a little bit more of that, Jarvis, to your point, in that second half. And that's how you get to a point in place where we're saying, hey, give Tyler Algier the darn ball, because then you look up and ultimately it's Tyler Algier with 8 carries for 60 yards. And he's really getting big chunks. And also, I think there was that one particular pass even where all he did was kind of like, I want to call it his little own shoulder chip block. And he just basically moved a couple defenders out of the way. It's plays like that, I think, that you have to see more consistently. And when you see it working, go to it, as opposed to, like you guys say, just chucking it down the field when there's kind of no need to do that. When clearly, if you keep taking those shorts, but you can keep driving and then you can keep possession of the ball. You lucked out today where they got about 35 minutes, you got about, or 36 minutes, you got about 24. But again, I don't think that's sustainable if you're looking to win long-term in this league.
Because I think that as an OC, you got to find your flow, right? You know, because, you know, Free talked about the situational, you know, football. And I think that is so important when you come into tight games, specifically divisional games. And by the way, you got 2 more coming up, so you better find it pretty quickly, sir, because the Bucs are coming. The Bucs are not a slouch. They, you know, when you think about, you know, common opponents and everything like that, you know, this is the thing that you have to really focus in on. And when you're in a game where you got some time. All you need is a few yards, 7 yards to get into a manageable field goal range. I know Younghoe Koo is that guy. He's been that guy since the Falcons brought him in. But like you gotta make him comfortable. Just like they made Kirk comfortable for the most part today in the offensive line. You gotta do the same thing for your kicker. Because all you need is 5 or 6 yards to just dump it down, but you go 3 straight shots down the field. I mean, now granted, the one that Darnell Mooney helped you get down there, and I think that was a little make good, for the previous call. I was just like, let's sell a PI, but they haven't been calling all day. And the Saints, Lord knows, their DBs, they don't look for the football. They just, hey man, they face guard. They're old school. Dennis Allen teaches those guys face guard, and they try to get away with it every Sunday. So when you think about it from that aspect, I think that Zach is a guy that he's a first year play caller. Like, you gotta have to find your flow, man, because when things change, things don't go your way, you got to be able to adjust on the fly. And because a lot of times in the second half game, there's no halftime. Hey, man, we're in the fourth quarter, so let's see what we need to do now. No, you need to be in the moment saying, hey, Kirk, dump it down. If nothing's there, if you don't see anything there, dump it down. And matter of fact, go ahead and dump it down, because you putting the ball in harm's way, because he did do that. One day I wouldn't blame him totally for that interception, because Raven Cloud slipped down in the place. He was expecting to be in a certain spot. He wasn't there, but I get that. But yeah, Zach has to find that flow, and he has to find it really quickly.
Yeah, and speaking of quickly and making quick adjustments, you are so right about that, because the Falcons have a short window to figure it out, because they're taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this coming Thursday. So we'll talk about that, keys to the game, and what we need to see reset on the other side in Next Up. This episode of our Locked On Falcons postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, the Falcons have gotten off to a pretty decent start this season. They get a win at home against the rival Saints. So, of course, that is exciting. And just like they got a big return today, you can get a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, kind of like that one I kept telling Jarvis I had about the fact that the Falcons were going to pull this thing out, you can check out the latest stats. You get that hunch. You do live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com to do just that, because, hey, you'll get a big return on FanDuel as America's #1 sportsbook. So again, get a hunch, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. All right, guys. So the Falcons have a tall task of theirs. Of course, they've got to reset very quickly, because they'll be taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this coming Thursday. And Aaron, when you talk about an offense that's potent, yes, the Falcons saw the Saints really give it to them, especially time of possession. But this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense in particular, I think, has really, really surprised a lot of people. Baker Mayfield, of course, threw for 347 yards today, accounted for 3 touchdowns in the Bucs 33-16 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's definitely a tall task. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. How does this defense reset so that they can prepare for Baker Mayfield and that Bucs offense?
Yeah, it seems like the Bucs have picked up where they left off last year, at the end of last year offensively. And so you thought, like, hey, they'll take a couple of half a season to figure it out, and we'll be fine. And it's like, nope, they're right back. So they look like right now the team to beat in the division. So it's going to be a tall task for this defense. We know that they historically have troubles against Mike Evans. I think kind of your plan as a defense is just like, hey, Mike Evans is going to get his, because he always gets his against the Falcons. If we can just shut down everybody else, right, then we might be okay at that point. If we can get pressure on Baker Mayfield, if we can shut down this run game and just make their off, and as long as you can just sort of keep Mike Evans contained, right, and not give him those big explosive plays that we know. He seems to get a 40-yard touchdown every time he plays the Falcons the last couple of years. But it's like, if we can prevent those plays from happening, like, I think that's your formula for success of being able to set up this team. And then obviously we need the offense to step up a little bit more, and that's a winnable game for the Falcons.
Yeah, because the Eagles actually miraculously kept Mike Evans under 100 yards, 8 receptions for 94 yards. So that's still kind of respectable, all things considered, because like you said, Mike Evans tends to torch people. But on the running side of the ball, they had a pretty nice game. They totaled 111 yards. Baker Mayfield, of course, had a little scamper here and there. But for you, Jarvis, when you look at the defense for the Falcons, what's maybe that tall task or that tall order that you want to see them be able to execute on when the Bucs come in on Thursday?
I've come to the resolution that Mike Evans is going to get his every time they play against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the guy who the Falcons killer for me, it got to be Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, that dude will light this team up. And then you'll look up at the end of the game. He had 9 catches for 120 in the tub. It's just like, man, where is this going, man? Because he's that reliable guy, working out of the slot, and we know how important that is in today's football when people slinging the ball all around the yard. So I think that's the guy that they have to not necessarily game plan for, but you gotta, because Mike Evans is the guy. That's wide receiver 1. You got to make sure your 13 doesn't go all the way off. But Chris Godwin can be that sneaky guy to kind of have one of those games where you're looking up and he's like, man, this dude absolutely torched us today. And I think D. Alford is going to be a guy that they're just going to have one of those type of games like he did today, to be able to, for this defense to be able to continue to do what they've been doing. And that is, hey, it's a bend but don't break until they start getting some sacks up front for me, because we understand like what those things do and making the quarterback get off schedule, and that's going to be a big factor going up against Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and the Eagles had a solid game, especially on the ground. 10 carries, 84 yards from Saquon Barkley, but where the Bucs defense shined was being able to keep Jalen Hurts in check. 18 for 30 for just 158 yards and a touchdown on the day. So looking at what we saw for the Falcons today, especially in the offense's inability to get into the red zone, only got there one time, and then they didn't score any touchdowns on the offensive side of the ball. What does this offense need to do to be able to at least produce enough so that it doesn't put so much pressure on the defense and the special teams to get it done Thursday?
Well, they should have had a red zone touchdown because they got that Bijan touchdown called back. And I don't know about you, but like every time we run a screen to Bijan, it goes for like 20 yards. So I'm just like, hey, the offense should just be hand the ball off to Tyler Algier and just run screens to Bijan. And that'll probably work 9 times out of 10 because that man in the open field is just incredible. So I just feel like, you got to get, we're talking about feature Tyler Algier, let him do his Tyler Algier things as we saw today, as he's been doing all season long. You got to get Bijan out in space somehow, whether it's the short passing game, whether it's the run game. Just let this guy get in the open field and let him cook. If you can do that, and then you can get, Mooney involved like he was, Ray McLeod involved, Drake London. Again, we got to get Kyle Pitts more involved. Bad game today, but like you still got to keep featuring that guy because he still has the potential to be dangerous. So we got to get all these weapons involved, and that's going to make for a potent mix. But yeah, man, Algier and Bijan are really the guys that are just putting this team on its back seemingly every single week, and just like, hey, get them the ball as much as possible. However you want to be as creative as you want. Zach, just go in the lab, cook up whatever you want. I just want those guys having the football in their hands and let them cook.
Yeah, and I know it's a Thursday night game, and I know it's against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but there was a 12th man in this building today, and you got to give the Falcons fans plenty of credit because at moments where the defense needed, I remember seeing Matthew Judon just kind of calling for them to bring it, and they really did rattle that Saints offense from time to time. You're going to need to get Baker Mayfield out of rhythm. So fans, don't be cute Thursday. Don't be showing up here at 8:45, 9 o'clock. Show up on time, show up for this game, take this game as an important game, just like you took this game this Sunday, because to you guys' point, they're playing a very early kind of slate of divisional games, right? And you want to go out and have a good showing early on so that you don't find yourself pressured. Not that you don't want to win at the end, but so that you don't find yourself pressured so that you can set the tone because you're supposed to be the cream of this division. So continue to show it.
Yeah, and be on the lookout for Todd Bowles' coach defense. So exotic blitzes, second level pressures. Devontae Davis had 2 sacks today against the Eagles. So be on the lookout for those guys. Often those the replacements, Storm Norton and Ryan Newsel. Solid job, passing grade today. Y'all got to step it up a little bit more this upcoming week, because on a short week and knowing what Ty Bowles like to do on defense, he likes to bring pressure. Those guys going to have another one and be able to establish themselves up front. And I'm looking forward to seeing what these guys do, because to be able to step in like they did today, in a divisional game, NFC South, big win, they were able to run the football when needed and when they had to. So, yeah, they're going to look for another good, solid performance from their offensive line for sure.
And Free, one more thing before we wrap up, Jarvis, one more thing before we wrap up. Give me a game ball. One guy, Free, that you want to give a game ball to for the Falcons today, and Jarvis, one guy you want to give a game ball to as well.
Younghoe Koo. Just give him. He was the team.
Negotiations should start today.
Yeah, it's like
go ahead. Give all the balls to Younghoe Koo. All of them. Pause. Sorry, give up all the balls. That's all I got.
Okay, so Younghoe Koo gets your game ball. Jarvis, is that a cosign for Younghoe Koo get your game ball as well?
I'm surprised you didn't get the game ball to Troy.
I mean,
boy.
Yeah, but what? Koo, Koo did his thing, man.
Yeah.
Koo bailed his team out so much.
I'm giving the game ball to Troy Anderson.
There you go, Jarvis. There you go.
There we go.
Postcast, do you hear this? This may not happen again this
It's
season.
Sunday. It's Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's Sunday.
Oh, okay. You're feeling gracious and feeling very giving. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I went to church this morning. I got my mind right. Got me a good word this morning. So I feel like I may have been a little bit harsh towards Troy Anderson, because he's still feeling his way. So on this day, I'm going to give a game ball to Mr. Anderson with the E. And I even call him Mr. You know what I'm saying? Much respect, sir. Pick six, and then he showed his speed. He showed his speed, y'all. Yeah, all that speed we've been talking about. Oh man, I think it was Chris Olave tried to tackle him, and he was like, "Nah, man, get off me, man. I'm in here. I'm running my 4-4, dog. I'm in here. I'm out here." You know what I'm saying? Right. So yeah, much respect to you, Mr. Anderson. Game ball goes to you, sir.
That is
hope you accept.
Right. And I tell you what, so we're spreading the love, since we gave Troy Anderson his flowers for his 17 tackles, and we gave Younghoe Koo his flowers for being a perfect 4-4. I want to give Tyler Algier his flowers as well, because I know it's sometimes challenging. I'm sure it's sometimes challenging to be that guy who has to kind of wait his turn, if you will. But when he got his turn every time this game, he absolutely delivered. And so I want to just give a shout out and a game ball to Tyler Algier as well. Listen, we appreciate you guys, our everydayers, for making the Locked On Falcons postcast your first listen of the day. And be sure to stop by the Atlanta Football Party for your second listen. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast. We will see you next time.